Welcome to the Attention Please podcast, now on video. If you like the podcast, please do consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. So today we will be deconstructing Squid Game, which according to Netflix is slated to be the most watched anything on their platform. So that definitely makes it worth discussing. In the 90s, there was a movie of great cultural significance and aesthetic quality which came out called Gunda, in which there was a line which went somewhat like this: जब आदमी पैसे के लिए कुत्तों की तरह लड़ते हैं, तब मुझे मजा आता है. And this line, for those of you who have been fortunate to have seen Gunda, was uttered by Bulla, one of the principal antagonists of the movie. Translated into English, it would be when people fight for money like dogs, I feel energized or I feel entertained. This is a succinct representation of the theme of the Squid Game. So it's, by the way, I should perhaps interrupt the narrative to say that there's a spoiler alert in place. I will be deconstructing the Squid Game. So for those of you who haven't seen Squid Game or want to go and watch Squid Game without knowing anything about Squid Game, which is, I would say, recommended, then please go on to the next video. So spoiler alert in place, you have been warned. So Squid Game is, of course, I've seen it. I was addicted to it. I've been reading up everything on Squid Game. It's an intensely and immensely entertaining. It's essentially Parasite meets Battle Royale. And the basic premise, again, just to sum up for those who may have forgotten it, I don't know why, but a bunch of desperately poor people, they play games. They are kind of recruited to play games where the winners progress to the next round and the losers die, in a kind of a modern adaptation of gladiatorial combat. And you, just like the gladiatorial contest, you have a bunch of super privileged people who watch everything and who relieve their boredom by essentially betting on the contestants. So the reason why I think Squid Game works so spectacularly is because, unlike some of its predecessors in this, fight to the finish, there were many movies like that. As I said, Battle Royale, for instance, Hunger Games. It works. I think it's much better than all of them. Battle Royale, I would still say, has its charm. For those of you who haven't seen it, I strongly recommend that you do. This is a little bit different. This is more social commentary. But before we get to the social commentary, it works purely as a dystopian thriller because it spends time in creating characters. And being a web series, that's the thing. You have the length, which you normally don't get in a 1.5 hour movie, which is what Battle Royale was, that it gives you the time to marinate and stew the protagonists so that when the inevitable death happens, it counts. And you kind of feel it. And another thing which I particularly liked was the art design was absolutely striking. It was kind of like a nightmare escape, kind of a dystopian Alice in Wonderland, the uniforms, the masks, everything was just so visually arresting. I think that's a big part of what has made Squid Game phenomenal, that it is a visual treat. And it's difficult to call something where people are dying and the blood and brains are flying around to call it a visual treat, but the Squid Game manages to do that. So let's talk about some of the thematic elements, some of the metaphors in the Squid Game, because obviously it is presented very obviously as an allegory for something else. So that should be fairly obvious. So first thing that the allegory, which I guess most of you have got, is that essentially the Squid Game represents the lot of the hapless, of those that do not have money, those that are not privileged, that the world is essentially like a Squid Game. So first thing that I appreciated about the movie was, unlike movies with a similar theme, that one of the rules of the Squid Game was that if a sufficient number of people voted to stop the game, then they could all go back. Now, usually in these kinds of closed world, everybody killing everybody, trope, this choice is never given. People are put in the place and they're asked to kill each other. This is slightly different. And this is very interesting, and it works also. It's a vital part of the story for those of you who have finished it. So this is, of course, a metaphor. So what is this a metaphor for? Why does this even exist? Just to make it a little different? Well, it obviously does make it a little different, but it is also a metaphor because, the battle that those that are not privileged, that they engage in daily life, they do have a choice. They might not want to do it. So you don't have to do it, but that choice, and that's exactly what the different characters find out. They actually start the game, they vote to stop the game. Most of them go back and find that the world actually is worse than that synthetic, game show. And they go back voluntarily. First time, they didn't know what the rules were. Second time, they actually went in knowing fully well what the rules are. And this, again, it was interesting because it kind of hooks the metaphor to what it is in real life, is that when you start playing this game of competing with others for scarce resources, maybe initially you start out and you don't know what you're doing. You just do it because everybody else is doing it. But then after some time, when you realize that maybe I don't want to do this, and you think that, you want to take an alternative, well, you will find that there is no alternative, that there is a choice, but the choice is an illusion. And this is what I really like, that the system may be fucked up, but there is no other system that will be less fucked up than what things are today. So that's kind of provides, I think, the real dystopia behind the Squid Game. The Squid Game isn't saying that there's anything better out there. The Squid Game is saying everything is the same. So I think I really like that part. The cynic in me absolutely went for it. So I don't know if you thought of the games in this way, but at least I did. That each of the games represented a particular aspect of the system that was being critiqued. So let's start with the first game. The first game was green signal, red signal. So when it's green, you go. When it's red, you stop. If you can't stop, you're still moving, then they shoot you. So green signal, red signal to me represents the arbitrary set of rules that the poor have to follow. And these rules are decided by the rich. That's what the series is trying to say, that these are arbitrary rules that the poor have to follow because they can't do any better. One little mistake here and there, and you're immediately in deep shit for the rest of your life. You go to jail, you are an ex-con, your life is essentially finished after that. The rich, however, do not have to obey these rules. They do have ways of getting out. But if you're poor, these arbitrary laws will apply to you. You will not have good legal representation. And this is also very true, that the system, even though we say it is the same for everyone, isn't exactly the same. So green signal, red signal kind of is a metaphor for that there are a set of arbitrary rules that the poor have to follow. You disobey them, and the rules are totally arbitrary. If you disobey them a little bit, that's it. That's the end of your life. Okay. The second game was you have to carve the shape out of that honey biscuit. So here, there is an appearance of fairness, right? Everybody gets, but everybody doesn't get the same shape. Some people get the triangle, which is an easy shape to cut out, and some people get the umbrella, which is a very difficult shape to cut out. So what it's trying to say is that to the poor, even when you think that, everybody has the same chance, not everybody has the same chance. There is a huge amount of luck, and your success depends on factors that you yourself cannot see. You don't even know what they are. So you cannot choose so you think that everybody is starting from the same place, but it's not. Everybody is not starting from the same place because not everybody will have to carve out the same shape. So the only way, and we see that the only way is that, the people who know it beforehand, is those of you who've seen it know that some people are kind of in the know as to what's going on and some people have no idea. That's that part of the game. That is the tragedy of survival, where you think that that things are being done, let's say, through merit, but there isn't. Not everybody is being given the same test effectively. It might seem to be the same test, but it's not. Some people are being given a triangle and some people are being given an umbrella, and there is nothing that you can do about it. That's the second part of it. That's the second part of the dystopia. The third part of the dystopia is possibly the most obvious one, which was the tug of war game, where here what they're saying is that a group of hapless people randomly choose some common criteria among them, let's say religion, and then they fight with another group of hapless people, while another third set who know that all of this is arbitrary, just watch and have fun. So this is what the tug of war is. This is national conflict, religious conflict, people just using strength, a group using their collective strength to pull the other side down, even though the other side are absolutely as helpless as they are. So that's the third part of the dystopia. The fourth part of the dystopia is the game of marbles. Here you face essentially a Sophie's choice. So if you remember, the teams here assemble thinking they're going to be playing each other, because that's exactly what they did in tug of war. And then they find out that they will have to play the game between themselves. And so these groups are basically a metaphor for families. So now the poor people are faced with a choice. Should I feed my children, or should I buy medicine for grandma? So that's the choice. And here again, the cruelty of the world is the world doesn't give you the rules. This says you decide what rules you will make. So in the first case, in green signal, red signal, the rules were made by the world. Here, you're given an objective, you're given a constraint, and you're said you make the rules so that the implication of your choice lives with you. You will never recover from whatever choice you make. And we see in the Squid Game that husband and wife team up because they think they're going to go against everyone, and then the husband and wife have to play that game of marbles, and the wife dies and the husband hangs himself. So that's the next stage of dystopia. Then the game after that is the glass bridge. Now the glass bridge is kind of different from the honey biscuit game, because in the glass bridge you're given a choice in the beginning. So you're given a partial choice. So you're asked to choose a set of numbers. So you think you have everything that's needed in order for you to win, except they don't tell you what the game is. So again, there is the whole notion is one of information asymmetry. The rich guy sitting and watching, they know everything. You don't. So should you go first? Should you stay in the middle, or should you be at the end? How should you live your life? What should you do in terms of taking risk? Should you be the guy who goes in and takes risk by going the first? Should you kind of be in the middle, live an average kind of life? Or should you be behind? Should you be conservative? You don't know. You take a random arbitrary choice based on your lack of knowledge of what is going to happen. And that's exactly the evil of the glass bridge contest. So I particularly like that. Now there is the other game which is going on, which is kind of the game which goes on parallel, which is the night fights, where they fight at night, essentially, and kill each other. So that's kind of a game which is not an official game, but very much is a game. So this is really a game which, this is a game of random violence. So it's a sheer violence of the poor on the poor for scarce resources. It doesn't obey any law, and it happens on the side. It always happens, and it will always happen. Which brings us to the last game, which is the Squid Game. So the Squid Game basically represents in many ways all the other games together. And it kind of crystallizes the overarching metaphor again in the Squid Game. And so that's why I liked it. It was so perfectly constructed, in that you have something that you want in life and you have to defend it. And there's the attacker comes in first on one leg, and then he crosses in, he has two legs. So the attacker first comes out with a little bit of a handicap, and then the attacker no longer has the handicap. And then essentially there are no rules, knives, anything. You just have to win against the other guy. So that's really, you want to call it capitalism or the dog-eat-dog world, but that's really what it comes down to. So I just felt that the way these games were, and I don't know if there was any conscious thought that went into it, or if this is just, again, me overanalyzing, but I just felt that each of those games kind of captured a different aspect of the existential tragedy of those that are not privileged in this world. Now, with respect to the downsides, if there was anything which was disappointing in the Squid Game, I think it was the ending. I think the last episode was quite underwhelming for me. Because, to come out with that the old man was a part of the game, I felt was really cheap shot. Because it took away the most emotional moment in the series, where the old man, who we think at that point of time is a genuine contestant who has Alzheimer's, just before dying, he says, "Thank you, I can remember things now." Because, again, the contest is in a place which reminds him of his childhood, and he can remember things again. And what he's essentially saying is, I don't care if I die at this point, I have my memory back. I, in any ways, wasn't alive. And that I felt was a beautiful moment. And then at the very end, you find out that, this guy was, he was in it all along, and he's the main villain, and he was just essentially stringing them all along, which I think was a little Abbas Mastan, in my opinion. I mean, you like to have twists, but there were enough twists in the main story, and they were very well done. It didn't need this kind of cheap twist at the end. This is, again, my personal opinion. But then again, maybe, and this again, I may be over analyzing here, that maybe Squid Game isn't about comfort. Maybe if it had ended the way I'd wanted it to, it would have been comforting. And maybe that's what Squid Game is trying to say. Maybe that's what it wants to leave us with, that we are always being manipulated. We never have the full information. And we don't know by who we are being manipulated. And maybe it's better that we don't know who we are being manipulated. So there's all this kind of meta narrative going on, and that's why I just love the Squid Game. And for those of you who, I'm definitely going to watch it again, obviously not now, but years in the future, which I like to do for things which I really like. And it's not a very long series. It's not like, obviously not like The Walking Dead, which I gave up on, or even like The Sopranos, but I will definitely revisit it. And tell me, so the last thing is, if you've watched, I hope you've watched it, because otherwise, if you haven't watched it and you just heard my deconstruction, I don't know why you did that. But if you did it, and if you have watched the Squid Game, please leave your thoughts in the comments. Again, this is a spoiler warning zone, so feel free to write whatever you want in terms of spoilers in the comments. I would love to hear what you think about the Squid Game, what your interpretation of the Squid Game was, and if there was anything that I missed. So thanks a lot for listening. And again, once again, let me ask you again to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, and have a great day.